Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Data Faces podcast that brings together the human stories behind data, analytics, and AI to the forefront. I'm David Sweenor, founder of Tiny Tech Guides and your host for today's discussion. In today's episode, we're going to talk about one of the most important and probably most understood topics in AI, trust. And I realize everybody's pro trust when we talk about AI, but what does it mean to trust a machine or a system? How do organizations build confidence in systems that are complex, evolving, and sometimes opaque? So to help sort through this, I'm joined by Robert Lake, owner of Trebor Strategic Advisors. Robert is a seasoned executive advisor with deep experience in strategy, analytics, and business transformation. So let's get into it. Robert, welcome to the Data Faces podcast.
Thanks, David. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Well, thank you for joining. So, Robert, can you tell us just a little bit about your background? I know you from when you were a data scientist and kind of what you're doing at Trebor today.
Yeah, so what's the fun thing is I've been doing data science for over 30 years, way before the actual term data scientist came out. And so all those advanced analytics, that's where I came from. And when we met, I was leading a data science organization and growing those skills going out. So I've transitioned now out of corporate world into business coaching and particularly helping people exit. And one of the things I've always found from my career, especially in the advanced analytics arena and AI arena, is people tended to try to paper over their business problems and hoping that AI or advanced analytics or some form of business methodology is going to fix the problems magically without fixing the underlying piece. So when I transitioned from my last corporate gig, I wanted to get into the world and help small businesses understand, one, how to use AI in their business without going bankrupt, but two, help them think about how they get the most out of it. So when they want to transition to the next role, either exiting to retire, exiting to sell their business and start another business, or grow their business further, that they're in a better position to do that. Because I know when I took my last two companies through exit, I had no idea what was going on. So I'm very determined to find out what that's all about.
Well, that sounds amazing, and you certainly have a lot of real world experience to help people through that. So when we talk about this intersection between analytics and strategy, let's talk about AI trust. So AI is inherently, it's probabilistic in nature,
Yeah.
and so businesses want certainty. So how do you balance this executive desire for certainty and probabilistic systems?
Well, this is one of the worst understood areas of what we do. And I remember going back for senior vice president I worked for once, I used to make models in Excel for him. And it was quite funny because he used to introduce me as his Excel model expert, which used to drive me crazy. That's a side point. But he also said, hey, here's Robert. He's an amazing person with Excel and he can build, model anything you want and predict anything you want to be able to do. You just need to hire a priest. And I used to sit there and go, what was all that about? It's because things were always changing, the dynamics of things are changing, and he didn't understand the probabilistic side. Even though he wanted that sensitivity, that variation being shown, he could not get past the point of having fixed outcomes coming out of algorithms and not having a range. And so it is hard for people to do that because they're not used to doing that. And when you look at what AI does today, it's hidden so well. For example,
Right.
you go to ChatGPT, you type something in, it gives you an answer back. It doesn't tell you anything about how accurate it is, what sensitivity was around that, what other metrics or measures it has to show, there's a very good chance this is only about 30% accurate. People don't know that. They're given an answer, so they take it for granted. And so that is a big, big problem. And one of the things I try to help people understand is like, hey, you can't trust everything you see there. You need to verify it. You need to think of it as, I have a question. I think I know what the answer should look like. I'm going to propose a question, and does it give me an answer in the area I think it is?
That's very interesting. It reminds me of like I used to do lean manufacturing, and one of the core tenets in there is there's a mean and there's a standard deviation, and you put these error bars on everything, and that it's a pretty basic form of data literacy. But I certainly agree with what you're saying is that people don't get it. I think it may be a little more complex, like with written text or an image. Like there's a 85% probability that there's this is bunkum or something, like how would you even think about that, if you were designing a system for someone to take action upon?
Yeah, and by the way, that's just so crazy. I've seen so many people use the wrong deviation or use the wrong chart. So you're using the wrong calculations totally. So they're getting all sorts of misinformation. And unfortunately, if the same with AI, if you don't set it up right, I'm talking about the AI engineers who set all this stuff up and test this on a regular basis. They're not doing that effectively and testing it effectively to make sure it's on track. It can walk off very easily into a weird situation, and only post haste when people start to complain. Wait a minute, this looks really weird or funky, or they may not know it for a long time that they don't know there's something wrong. And
Mm,
one of the things I used to tell people, and I remember getting into a heated conversation with someone about AI, especially images, and they're saying, "Well, we should be able to measure something." It's like it has no idea. It has no idea it's you on the screen right now. We have no idea that it's your face. It's
sure.
just a guess. It just so happens that if AI looks at that and says, "Well, I have enough data points. I think this is human face." However, I can get a picture of a dog or a cat that has certain common features to you, and it could confuse them.
Mm,
And there are so many examples online where you see people how to confuse an AI image detector. One of my favorite ones is chocolate chip muffins
right,
and
right. The
and
dogs.
dog faces. Yeah, and it's and that's what it is, because at the end of the day, because people we're being human, so when we look at something, we say, "Oh, that's a football." But how do you know that's a football? How do you know that's a baseball? How do you know that's a baseball bat? The image doesn't know that. It just knows colors, three dimensions of color and shapes, and they're usually
Mm,
just lines. So some form of we break everything down to a line. Is it straight line going up and down to the side, going off at a different angle? And when you bring all those together with those colors, that's how you get something. It does not know that it's a bat. It's guessing. And
mm,
so when people start to get through that and you go, oh, I don't like this now. I'm not sure.
do you think, Robert, do you think people, you know anthropomorphize AI too much? The latest thing was agentic. Oh, these are reasoning systems or whatever. They're agents, and we give them all these human qualities. To me, it's a program looping through a series of things and evaluating some objective function and guessing. To your point, they're pretty good guesses, but do you think we put too much human qualities into these machines?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, if you look at humans overall, and not just over the past 5, 10 years, but over the millennia since the dawn of creation, there's two things that we've always done. One, we've always tried to find the easiest, fastest way of doing something. Hence,
Hmm.
we ended up generating the water wheel, and then wagons, and then metals, and all these other things that came through, all these different technologies that we built to make our lives easier. We've gone through the ability of being able to make one car in like 40 days now to be able to build a car inside one day.
Mm,
We're always trying to find the quickest, shortest, fastest way to do as much as possible with a little amount of human effort as possible. And so that's track one. Track two is we humanize everything,
right.
because we're such a social animal. You think about all the domestication, all the different pets that we have, and how we implicitly implant what we think on the world on other people, which
Mm,
reason why a lot of people have they talk about themselves being pet parents, and they're pets of the children. So it's common. So it's actually natural to expect people to start to adopt AI that way, because it's that hope. It's like, oh, I can do less work. That means I can do more and get something else out of it, which is the
mhm,
first thing. And then I get associated with it because now I have something listening to me, and it doesn't reason. By the way, it's just a probabilistic lookup. You can actually decision tree some of these things and go, okay, if someone says this, they're probably going to say X, Y, or Z, and the next thing will come down as that.
mm,
But
no,
the psychology of this is that now you have someone that you can talk to, and unfortunately, you see this on the ads. I believe it's the Android one at the moment, where you hear them talking to the phone, and there's I remember the advert. There's a lady laying on the bed, and she's talking to someone as though they've
yeah.
been the best friend for like 40 years. And the thing is, what you have to understand is when we as humans are talking to each other, we're engaging, we're connecting, and we're constantly sensing all the time. Are we genuine to each other?
Mhm,
The trouble is when you build an algorithm to do that, it's a manipulation, because what we're doing is we're deliberately forcing that connection. Whereas you and I can have a conversation. We may like each other, may not like each other, but we can have a conversation together
Sure.
and we get to a point. But if I was more on an AI point of view, you don't know why I'm engaging you on that, because you can't understand my motive, because you don't know what I was programmed to do. And
Mm.
that is a problem for trust. So you're going to have people who get tied to this, and there are examples of it. Unfortunately, last year there was a young 16-year-old in Florida
Yep.
shot himself after he had a relationship ongoing with an AI bot in a computer game for a couple of years, and something happened to the relationship, and he believed he couldn't live without this relationship, and took his life. You're going to see more of that, and that's an unfortunate side effect. And I do believe the psychologists and therapists are going to see a lot more uptick in some form of emotional dependence issues with something that's inanimate. So in other words, it's not human, and it really doesn't have feelings. AI doesn't have feelings. Much
Yeah.
if you swear at Alexa, she'll tell you that hurt my feelings. It did not. That was coded.
It's just that's very. When I remember those ads when they came out and the people talking to the AI, and I'm like, what a sad state of affairs. This person's in this usually some nice location in a city or a beach or what have you, and like sitting there talking to the phone, not experiencing the world. But anyways, let's talk. Let's maybe another question I have is so trust in AI. I think when people are building the systems, it requires trusting the people behind it. So, how do you go about evaluating the intentions of the AI builders?
So you have to look at what they call trust. And what's quite funny, because when I talk about trust, I'm talking about that human connection trust, of how we build trust together and how we work together.
Mhm.
In AI, if you look at what they call the trust module, this is in ChatGPT, it's actually in loads of them. It's about, do we trust the human to use us and ask us the questions we want to answer? So that's the first place I look, is what, because if you go into the API of ChatGPT, you can actually interrogate the trust module. And what it'll do is give you scores in, it used to be 5, I think it's 7, maybe even 9 areas now,
Okay.
um, of how your question rates in terms of bullying, inappropriate conversations, and all these different pieces. And the thing is, most people don't know that. What they see is that they have the console, and they type the question, "Hey, what's the weather going to be like today?" And it'll go off and do its thing. But what you don't know, there's already a pre-vetting going on. Wait a minute, do we like this question? And so for me,
Right.
that's the first place I look. What questions am I allowed to ask? What questions am I not allowed to ask? And so now you have a conflict, because if you look in the US, we have a thing called freedom of speech. It's not in many other countries. I don't know that many countries. People say, "Oh, you have freedom of speech in Europe." No, you don't. You don't have freedom of speech in the UK either.
Mhm.
You have freedom to speak to a point. It's not freedom of speech. There's a
Right.
difference.
Right.
And so, what you have to be careful of, are we giving away freedom of speech by allowing private corporations to say what you're allowed to ask, what you're not allowed to ask? And then you're going to have the cynical folks, or you could call them cynical, is one way of looking at them, who say, "Well, you're only allowing me to think of this, and you're giving me answers this way." So they're always looking for the dark side, or the
Right.
anti side of what's going on. And so for me, that needs to be transparent. You need to be able to say, "Here's what we're going on. Here are our core values. Our core values is that you know we don't solicit or enable any form of slavery, whether it's sexual or physical slavery,
Mhm.
child abuse." And you start listing these things down. But what happens after a while, when you start listing these things down, you get to a point where it's gray. And some people say, "Yeah, absolute," because our moral stature say this is absolute. And other people are, "Well, when we talk about drugs, what do we really mean? We talk about hard drugs, soft drugs, define those." And there's no real definitions.
Right.
And so this is the problem. And you've seen this with social media over the last well, actually 6 to 8 years now, realistically, of people being shadow banned, being told you can't do this, you can do this. People claiming bullying, and everything is in the eye of the beholder. And so when you start to put these things together, when I'm looking at this, I have to look at the company's offerness. What are your guidelines? Make it clear, make it precise. I've met with so many small business owners who I've spoken to, and they say, "Hey, I was doing great online sales, and then from 1 week to the next, my online sales died. Can you help?" I'm
Mm.
like, "Go and look at what's going on." They've been banned, and it's
Okay.
like, "Why were you banned?" And then you go and query Facebook or wherever the host was, and you find out that actually someone complained, and then you dig a little deeper, and you found out who the person who complained, and then you dig a little deeper, and you found out the person who complained wasn't a customer; it was a competitor.
Right.
And so what you've changed now is a human dynamic of what we used to primitively call bullying.
Mhm.
Bullying used to be 20, 30 years ago, physical.
Right.
Now it's all mental. And so the dynamics of it changed. So you'll see, you know, I tell people, when I was a kid, it's like, I'm feeling old now, in a playground, you wouldn't tell the bully where to go or mouth off the bully because you get slapped.
Right.
And you learn how to interact with people more pleasantly and more effectively. Now you have people hiding behind screens saying all sorts of things, and we're getting very, very uncivil that way.
Yep.
Hence, now people say we need to bring a trust module in to stop all this. And it's like, no, we need to set up a behavior system to say, hey, this is what we tolerate, this is what we don't tolerate, and then chase that, or don't chase it, but make your mind up where your line in the sand is, and then allow capitalism to take your company where it goes. I think a lot of companies are so scared that they're going to lose customers or lose their revenue that they will do things and it's sort of hidden. They'll say generally what they're going to do, but when it comes up, people are like scratching their head, like, why did they got banned? I don't understand why I got banned for this. It doesn't say
Right.
this in there. And then someone will say something that's obtuse or not there.
That's really interesting. And, to your point about, what's allowed and not, that's going to vary by ideology, your geopolitical affiliation. There's a whole rat's nest we won't get into. We see, just different morals, I guess, across the globe. But I'd like to maybe bring this back to you know, explainability and accountability. Um, where does it begin in enterprise system, and sort of who owns this? Where does the buck stop? Is it the designer of the system? Is it the designer of the models? Is it the company running the system? I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So for me, it always has to come back to the owner or the CEO, the
Mhm.
board, or whoever runs the company. It has to come from them about what we're going to do, why we're going to do it. Because it's real easy to give someone who's really excited about something. You're seeing your kids at Christmas. You give them that present. They open the present up. Oh my God, this is amazing! And now they're building all sorts of things. You don't see them for weeks upon end.
Right.
That is what data scientists can be like. That's what any computer coder can be like. They get in there and they get in and just leave me alone. Let me build something, and they build something, and it's like, ta-da! I built something. And like, yeah, that looks great. Okay, but how are we going to use it?
Right.
So it has to start with leadership and ultimately at the top of the leadership pyramid of what is it we're trying to do from a business? How do we believe this is going to help us? And here is your problem to solve. Because in AI, you can solve millions of different things and not solve the one thing that's needed for your business. And so you need to have that strategic direction of saying, here's where we're going. We are going to be working in this market space with this client avatar. And here are our products that we're serving. Here's the problems we're trying to solve. And here's how we believe AI can help us be efficient, be effective, and generate additional revenue, cost savings for our clients and customers, and keep us out of jail by keeping us on track legally. So
Mm.
where in those things does it come out and be very explicit and say, this is what we want from AI? Because now what I've done is I set a goal with an objective, with a very clear description of what success looks like, and then have your AI team go to build that and meet that. Not have it the other way around where AI team comes out with machine learning. It is, oh, we got a new algorithm. Great. What does it do? How does it work? And where is it contrary to where we need to go? So we need to get back to that concept of setting up an experiment. That's all it is. We're setting up an experiment. What are the parameters around that experiment? Leadership needs to make sure they have that done. Otherwise, and it's really easy to do, especially for a small business. I'll pick on Microsoft a little bit here and not blaming them. They have a good business model. If you go and buy a 365 suite, a basic one per user, you're talking about $15 to $20 a month. add Copilot on top of it, and then add all the other things that interact with Copilot. Now you're going from 15 to 20 bucks a month to 40 to 50 to 60 to 70 to 80 to 100 bucks a month per user. And now suddenly you've increased your operating expenses in the IT realm 5 times. For what? What were you trying to achieve? What did you get out of it? And so that is why you need to have that financial responsibility. You need to have the accountability to what we're going to do and what we're not going to do. So you set a very good parameter for AI. And when you do that, I believe you get some really great results out of it.
You know, I like this. You know, you're fundamentally, I think you're suggesting and get beyond the hype
Yes.
and you don't have the ta-da and really start with the business problem. What's the strategic direction? What the problem do we want to solve? Work backwards from that. How do you build this? Maybe I'll call it an AI habit. So, you know, we're starting with this business problem, but how do you build this sort of repeatable, you know, production system or whatever you want to call it that builds long-term confidence in the AI systems being built and maybe the results that are coming out? What would your advice to your leadership teams?
Yeah. So let's go back to the basics. You mentioned Lean Six Sigma earlier. Constant, continuous improvement.
Mhm.
So you need to be constantly testing, constantly improving, constantly gaining feedback, not just from initial users, but from your wider users. So you think about it, you have a product, and we do, and this is one thing I help some senior business leaders understand is that AI is nothing different to anything else you do as a business.
Mhm.
You need to monitor it, you need to track it, you need to improve it, and you need to get feedback. And Lean Six Sigma rule number one: customer is king.
Right.
Not your AI engineers, not your developers, not your sales team or your marketing team, because they've got the amazing imagination of where they want to go. It's your customers. Your customers are king. If your customers don't need this or don't want this or not interested in this, it's not going to help solve their problem. Why are we doing it? And
Mhm.
so it's that focus. So it doesn't matter what we're talking about. It's the same for anything in the business. What is your customers' 3 to 5 pain points? How are you solving that? And what makes you different? Because that gives you that market dominating position. That allows you to be more dominant in the marketplace. In other words, be able to sell your product easier and faster. And so
Okay.
when you work on that and do that, now you have the discipline in place. So it's nothing new. Anyone who's been running a business or been an executive or a leader in some form knows these basic things. What's my goal? How do I make myself more efficient and improve myself? And how do I generate greater value? Stick with
Mm.
that, and you'll be successful.
Okay, that's great advice. You know, earlier you mentioned this. I don't know if you used the term exactly, but you know, AI guardrails on the inputs to it. You know, are we even allowed to ask this question? So, you know, everybody is talking about ethics and governance and how to do this. You know, when you go look at the frameworks out there, I mean, NIST has one, IEEE has one, OSID has one. You know, there's just lots of different frameworks. You know, do we need a more of a trust framework, or do you think what we have is adequate that's out there today?
Uh, so the simple answer to that is yes, no, and maybe.
I, I like that. Hedge your bets there, Robert.
Yeah, the whole thing is we're human. We have different standards. If you think about engineering, you think about business, there are all sorts of different standards depending on your political region, your geographical region, the way you interact. There's so many different reasons why you have all these different pieces and how we get everyone to agree. And by the way, you and I could run exactly identical companies, but we run it slightly different because our core values are different. Because that's what it comes down to. It's what are your
Sure.
core values? And so I think sometimes we've got a little, especially over these last few years, we've got very hesitant around our core values. We've been dictated what our core values should be.
Mm.
And what you're seeing now with companies is starting to go back to what their traditional core values are. What is it you as a leadership team are going to make decisions on hiring and firing? So when we talk about frameworks, and I come back again to the leadership because it's the ultimate leadership team is going to do this, whether it's the board or whether the CEO or the executive team or is it a single owner or a couple of partners together. They got to make a decision, and it has to be around their core values. Because if it's not around the core values, guess what they're not going to do? They're not going to make hiring, firing decisions. Who are they going to hire from an employment point of view? Who are they going to bring on? What clients they want to work with? Who are their vendors? Who do they want to work with? And I think we have to go back to trusting ourselves that we understand that you and I are going to work when we work together, that we work together when we have similar core values. If we have completely opposing views, you know what? It's okay. We don't have to work together.
Sure.
But we have to get back to that trust part of humanity, which unfortunately been a side effect of social media where we've been destroying that, and we've had people come in dictating, okay, you need to be thinking this way, you need to be thinking that way, and that is not core value, because now what you have is people anti core value. So you see a lot of people go quiet,
Right.
and then something else happens, and people are like, why did that happen? Well, because you're suppressing people's core values. We need to get back to core values for our business and say this is how we want to work together. And unfortunately, governments have not been renownedly successful. If I have to go all the way back to through the millennia again to look for a government that's ever been successful, right? Because it's a will of a group of people. It's not the whole of the people. Now, cynically, people say the government, we work on behalf of the people. Yes, but are you really working on my behalf, or are you working on someone else's behalf? It's hard to work that out when
Sure.
you mess it up. But the whole thing is, it's how do we work together as a community? What's the right thing to do in community? And trust capitalism. The one thing I've learned about whether I want to be capitalist or socialist or whatever is when you get to true capitalism, if I only want to work with this one type of person, and they have to have all these set values, and they live their life exactly this way, I may only end up with one client
Right.
out of billions of people in the world. But if I'm happy doing that, great. But I'm not going to be in business long unless this one client just happens to be a multi-billionaire and they give me all their money, which is fantasy. We all know that, because
Sure.
we all love to have that one person that does that. So if you want to work with a lot of people, you have to be able to be reasonably flexible. But there's nothing wrong with you saying, okay, we only work with this group. Okay, fine. Do you want to be successful? Well, how are you going to make your millions? Where's the total addressable market? How much money is available to spend in that market space? Not much. Well, you're not going to be a successful business then, are you? Capitalism takes care of that. So it's how do we help build those out and be a little bit generous, but also being able to be specific, because there are niches, and
Sure.
because you can't serve everyone in the world, you're not big enough. Especially if you're a small company of like 5 people, you can't serve 10 billion people. It's not possible unless you come up with a way of doing that. So that for me is the key: is get back to your core values, operate the way you want to be operated, and it's okay. Everyone has some form of spiritual direction. Everyone has some form of societal directions. Everyone has some form of ancestral relationship direction. It's something you've inherited, you've learned, been passed down year over year. And some people have some form of education or enlightenment
Hmm.
component to it. Be yourself. If people don't want to work with you, that's fine. You don't force them to work with you, because you're forcing people to be like you, and you're not accepting them for who they are. And that's always my argument when I see people saying, oh, you have to do this and you have to do. Well, wait a minute, you're forcing me to be that way. You're asking me not to be who I am, but you're telling me you have to be who you are. So that is a little idiosyncrasy. So
Mm.
for me, that's the thing to think about. Get back to your core values of your business. Core values of business is not your employees. It's the decision makers. Why is it decision makers? Because they are the ones making decisions every single day. Hire, fire. First thing I ask people, okay, this is my core value. Okay, show me where you've hired or fired someone based on the core value. I haven't. Show me how you made a business decision on that. I haven't. It's not a core value. It may be moral inside of you, but you're not using it to make business decisions.
Right. I like that. I like that notion. You have to really, truly understand your core values. So on the AI ethics and governance, you talk to a lot of these executive teams. How much, number one, like, how much do execs, based on your experience, how much do they really even understand AI or applications of it or how it works? I have a hypothesis on this. I don't think it's very much. And then number two, how much do they need to understand about it to be, do they have to have a certain level of knowledge, or no, they just got to get back to your core values so they can run their business? I'd love to hear your thought on that. So what is AI exec maturity, and what's required?
Yeah, so let me start this off with, so when I go interview for leadership roles, and talk to CEOs, and I always made them laugh with this one comment. And they'll say to me, "Okay, so tell me why should I hire you as your AI lead, as my AI leader, and to run my data science organization or AI development group?" And I said, real simple. I am going to be the first person to tell you not to use AI. And they look at you and go, "What? So
Right.
what?" Yeah, I am going to tell you when you don't need it. And we need more people to do that and help CEOs to do that. The trouble is, with my experience, I've worked with so many business leaders who don't really understand AI, or
Hmm.
they have an understanding, but it's way off from what it really is.
Yep.
And I've worked with a few leaders who really do understand it. But the trouble is, they're so technical in their understanding is they forget to translate it back to business. And
Right.
so there has to be that translation piece. So for any business owner or CEO out there, it really comes back to, what is your job? You think about what your job is and you ask questions around that. And so don't allow people to do the shiny object thing, because it's real easy to come in there and go, "Oh, look at this. This is wonderful." And they go, "Oh, that's really good." And they get lost in the shiny object.
Sure.
You got to come back to, okay, does it help me make money? Does it help me save money? Does it keep me out of jail? Three things, the reasons why people will buy from you, the reasons why you will be successful in business. Does it, if I'm selling to someone, does it help them sell and make money? Does it help them save money? Or does it legally keep them out of jail because it keeps them on track and reminds them, "Oh, by the way, you should have paid your taxes, or we've done your taxes for you." It's that sort of thing. It's those three basic principles. And so if the AI is helping you do that, and how is it helping us make money? And the
Hmm.
question is, then it comes back to your strategic plan. If it's helping us make money, where is it making money? Well, you're making money with these avatars over here. No, they're not our avatars. Our avatar is this avatar. So again, it's about the alignment, and that's what the
Right.
job of the CEO is, to make sure everything is aligned, moving in the right direction, putting their chief operating officer on it, and get that thing running, and get that thing running as smoothly and as fast as possible.
Okay.
And so, how much should they really know about AI? Oh, that's a real deep question. I actually wrote a presentation which I used to give to leaders to help them do it. And what was funny is I show them the fun side of AI and I show them the scary side of AI,
Yep.
and try to give them a balance. And to be honest, there's no real, you must know this much, you must know that much. It's more about, use your common sense. Does this make sense? Use your creepy meter. Don't
That's right.
don't don't be scared to say, "Hey, I wouldn't like this."
Yep.
A good example of that, I interviewed a lady when I was in a large company to potentially join my team, and she was working on this project. And what it was is that the moment you walked into the store, the video monitor in front of you will show your face and say, "Hey, Robert, how you doing? Welcome. By the way, the condoms are this direction, the alcohol's that direction, the cigarettes are
Right.
this direction." And you're going to go, "Whoa, hey, wait a minute. One, I don't want the whole world to know what I'm buying. And two, I'm with my wife. She doesn't know I'm drinking and smoking."
Right.
You
Oh
got you
my
got to
gosh.
think these things through. And so
Yep.
one of my arguments, so this is one of the things I was trying to get across in my book, is that, think of the film Jurassic Park. The one most annoying character in Jurassic Park with me was always Jeff Bloomberg. He was the chaos
Yep.
theorist.
Yep.
And boy, he was such a great character, played it so well. You need to have that sort of thought process. If we do this, what are the other consequences that may not be directly, but could be intangible to what we're doing? And we need a
Mhm.
little bit more of that type of thought. So you got to
Sure.
allow people to think outside the box and think, okay, how can it help us? How can it not help us? And not have an echo chamber of like, "Oh, this is all amazing." Everyone go, "Oh, it's all amazing." And now they're hypnotized with the shiny new object.
Sure. Yeah, it's like the role of the challenger. You got to be challenge the organization. So that's very
Yeah.
interesting. So we have maybe a minute or two left for maybe a final question before we wrap. But what are sort of the lessons about trust you've learned, really not from the technology side of it, but from really leading organizational change with your clients?
I think Simon Sinek says it the best. Start with the why. Because if you don't start with the why, you don't build trust. If people don't understand why they're doing something, they don't have trust. And you can tell people where we're going, what we're doing, and they'll go, "Okay, well, Why? Why now? Some people will get it. It's like, oh yeah, this is great. Why? Because it's in line with where they're in tune. But a lot of people are going to sit there going, what are we doing this for? And then they start going into the dark side of the mind, going, oh, does that mean I'm going to lose my job? Oh, does that mean they're going to cut my pay? Oh, does that mean? 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 And they're going to go down that what if scenario
Right,
complex,
right. Yep.
and then they're not aligned. You've got to start with the why. Why are we going here? If that is not clear, you've got to allow people to ask and challenge that. The challenging of the why is not a challenge of your authority or your leadership. It's allowing someone to understand, to comprehend and understand. Now, whether you can take them to, if it's just one person, take them to one side and have a conversation with them and follow up with them. But it's not about why are you asking me this? It's okay, tell me more about how did you get to think about this? How did you get to start thinking about in this direction? What is it it's in your mind that it has you confused? And what you start to then learn is how to communicate more effectively with people. I've learned so many different change management systems. I mean, the worst one I had was given to me. It was like 48 different tool sets. And I sat there and I've been doing change management for like 12 years, scratching my head going, I do like 3 of those.
Right.
And I've never had a problem with my change management stuff. But you ask me now to do all these tools, and the question is why?
Mhm.
What am I missing? And the thing is, the toolbox they gave us was great because if I encountered a situation where I came across this, oh, I got a tool over here I can use now.
Mhm.
I'm using the tool out of the toolbox when I need to use it, not being the way a lot of people apply what they've been taught. Is they use every single tool and toolbox on the job. It's like, no, you don't need to do that because you've been taught here's a process and we make you use every single tool because you want to learn every tool, but that's not how you practically apply something. And for
Okay.
me, this is the same. Don't have
Okay.
to use everything.
All right. Well, Robert, um, I think this has been a fascinating discussion. Maybe any final thoughts for our listeners or viewers out there thinking about AI trust? What do you recommend they go do or read or research? For your final thoughts.
It's real simple. My grandma used to say this is like when you're out there in the world, ask yourself, what would your nana say? And And the whole thing is, it's crazy why I think of that, but you have to think that through. What would so and so say? What would everyone knows someone who they hold you accountable, but they do it in a really quiet way. It's your grandparents or your great aunt or someone out there that when you look at you go, you're ashamed.
Mhm.
I really shouldn't be doing that in front of them, or this is not the behavior they expected of me. Think about that when you want to do AI. Is it sounds cool for me right now, but what would someone else say? What would someone else say? What would someone else say? And try to understand where it fits and why it fits in that direction. And then it comes back to your core values. Does that meet my core values?
Sure. Okay.
Am I there to manipulate people, to force people into doing something? Because AI is now hyper tuned to get the most out of our interaction. Great, but you're expending through relationships faster than what you would naturally do. So yeah, ask what would Granny say if they put me in.
I love that. And so, Robert, how can people get a hold of you for
Yeah, so you can get
potential
hold of me
engagement?
through my website. So it's treeboradvisors.com, or you can email me at robert@treeboradvisors.com.
Great. We'll drop that in the show notes. Well, Robert, this has been a fascinating discussion. We could go on all day, but I think it's time to call it an end. But it's been extremely engaging and insightful. So I appreciate you joining the show and appreciate you being on the Data Faces podcast.
All right. Thank you for the invite, David. Appreciate it.
Cheers.